We should have known. We should have called it quits earlier. My gut feel was there is something very wrong with this builder in terms of the way he operates, but I ignored it. When someone starts to show signs of narcissistic personality and they're in charge of your money and your build, you need to address it head on.
Get the hell out, cut the cord, just don't worry about it, you just sign this. And we were kind of brought along in the tidal wave of optimism. We've just done a search on him and there were 9 credit defaults against his wife's name. There was that just little bit at the back of my brain going, can you trust this guy? Building wealth through property isn't about chasing big deals and paydays. It's about owning assets that make money for you consistently. But figuring it all out on your own, that's where most people get stuck. That's why we created this Property Life membership. It's everything we wish we had when we started. Expert guidance, real-world case studies, and a private community of investors actually doing deals, not just talking about them. So you could spend years trying to piece it all together yourself, or you could plug into a system that's already working for our community. Check out our membership page at This Property Life. Everything you need to know is right there. Success is a team sport. Come join in. Hi and welcome to This Property Life. I'm Nick Claydon. I'm here today with my friend and colleague Sarah Blaney. Hi Sarah.
Hi Nick.
How are we doing?
We're all right, but we're going to talk about a bit of a tricky subject today, aren't we?
We are. It's probably going to get a little bit raw, a little bit personal. I think that's it's important, for us to be kind of honest and authentic about, what we do and what we're telling everyone, because, it's not all cupcakes and rainbows when you're in property. There are some times when things go wrong. And today, what we're really going to try and do is drill down into, and we've thought about this quite a bit, to think, well, when things go wrong, what can you really pin it down to? And we both kind of agreed that often it's your gut feeling and ignoring that gut feeling. So essentially, we're really going to talk about when not to ignore your gut feeling, to pay attention to it, because it's often, more often than not, it's right.
Quick heads up before we start the show. If you're serious about buy-to-let investing in 2025, you're going to need to know where to invest. Luckily for you, we've helped countless investors find their goldmine area. And we've put together our free 2025 Buy-to-Let Hotspots Guide. It's packed full of insider tips, market trends, and of course, the top 10 UK rental goldmines. So head to our link in the description below and start investing smart.
And you can call it gut feeling. We can call it our subconscious or our unconscious. And anyone that's sort of developed a little bit of sort of more inner thinking will know all about the subconscious and unconscious and how it tries to keep you safe, doesn't it? And sometimes it's misaligned, but generally it's built up a bit like an AI agent on life experiences and what happens as a consequence of all these different things. So your gut feeling is a really powerful, it's like a second brain, I think. That's how I like to think of it.
Yeah, and if by a guy called Steve Harris, I think, called the Chimp Paradox, which is all about this. And there's lots of books about this. There's I forget the author's name. There's one called, about the red brain and the blue brain, all kind of saying the same things. And Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. There's another one. It's all about how, you essentially do have 2 brains. You've got your kind of primal, often referred to as the animal brain, the one that's kind of more instinctive, frontal lobe thinking brain. And they do different things. They're almost like 2 completely different systems in your body. And your primal brain has kind of, evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to keep you safe. And often it's your thinking brain, your frontal lobe brain that sometimes overrides that tries to with logic, and sometimes it ends badly or goes badly. So maybe let's dig into that a little bit more. So when's a time where you've overridden your primal fast thinking brain?
Yeah, so I think if I'm going to take one from when I very first started doing property with gusto, so that, about 10 years ago, when we'd done property for, a couple of decades, but 10 years ago, we really ramped it up. Our first project, which was a 2-bed terrace, turned it into a 6-bed HMO in Merseyside. The project actually financially worked with one of the best ever that we've ever done. And it was a dream of a project. But in the middle of that, we had selected a builder based on architect recommendations, other investor recommendations, done a lot of due diligence, met him lots of times, did all of that, went through the build. It was working okay to a point, and then the wheels fell off. And as the wheels were falling off, things like the stories, always a new story with him. It was always, oh, the van's broken down. This person's done this to me. Literally a fantasist kind of stories that would come out about business, but also about him personally. And my gut feel was there is something very wrong with this builder in terms of the way he operates. But I ignored it and let it keep going. We're absolutely flinging off down the road behind me. And then we had to solve the problem, which we did. And it worked, but it was horrible at the time. We lost a bit of money via that builder. And I should have just trusted my gut that when someone starts to show signs of narcissistic personality and a bit of psychopathic personality, and they're in charge of your money and your build, you need to address it head on.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because when you're in it, your thinking brain kind of feels logically, I can get through this. If I do this, this, and this, I can, it's hard. It feels at the time, I think, harder to change it than to try and get through it. Whereas your primal brain is going, get the hell out, cut the cord, just put a line under it now. Your logical brain goes, no, it's okay. Look, we can work this out. It'll be okay. It's probably just this or probably just that. We'll get through it.
You want to believe the silly stories that are coming out of their mouths and that you didn't make a mistake in choosing that builder.
I think we've both got a few builder contractor stories and we do kind of hammer them quite a bit. I'm just going to say there are some really good, we've got some key members of our team who are great and really trustworthy. So I'll take a slightly different tack on one of mine. We've got many. Going back quite a few years now, started in property. We got off to a good start. We built up a portfolio of buy-to-lets and HMOs. And we were operating with we were doing some contracting with a education provider at the time, which is, again, is a bit of a red flag, isn't it? When a company changes its name a few times, that's a bit of an alarm bell. That's your primal brain going, what's going on with these guys? These guys all right? Okay. But there was a particular guy there who was a big kind of flamboyant, larger than life character. He was one of their main trainers at the time. He would kind of big himself up loads. He wore the stripy suits, make these big fat cigars, double-barreled name, made himself out to be this, ex-city whiz who then, got into property and was really successful in property and was training people. There was something at the back of my brain. My primal brain was just going, really? A bit of a red flag on, I've met people like that. And that whole, you mentioned the word narcissistic. That was definitely going on there. There was that just little bit at the back of my brain going, can you trust this guy? At the time, Carol and I were looking to kind of go bigger, get into some bigging himself up about what, the things that he could get into. And he approached us to go into business with him and to get into some developments. And we were, we had this idea of, there were a lot of pubs and still are a lot of old kind of pubs being sold around the country. And his idea was to kind of, redevelop these pubs into mixed use building. A lot of pubs have like accommodation above that wasn't really being used much, and to get a pub and convert it and renovate the pub, lease out the pub and create living space above, turn that into flats and sell them. That was his kind of idea, and I kind of liked the sound of it. And he approached us to get involved with him. And at the time we were quite flattered because he was kind of he was what we perceived to be way ahead of us, done loads, and it was quite flattering that he approached us to come into business with him. There were flags there for sure. I was never, although partially taken in by him, it was never, I never felt 100% as someone I could trust. But the opportunity or perceived opportunity was quite strong. And so Karen and I discussed it, and we kind of, persuaded ourselves that it was a really great idea to do this. So we ended up, we obviously had to put some money in, and we got some angels on board as well to come in, help purchase the properties. Where we were operating was up in the northeast, so not the highest value areas. And he was really bullish on, we'd bought one pub, and we're like, well, look, hang on, I'm a little bit more cautious. I'm like, well, hang on, let's just get going with this one. He's like, no, we've got to scale. We ended up buying 4. We discovered that he'd been using this guy who had a bridging company. Yeah, we'll go to this guy. He's got great bridging product, but don't worry about it. Just sign this. And we were kind of brought along in the tidal wave of optimism and how this is all going to be awesome. And, we put our names to this paperwork, which we discovered when things went south, which they inevitably were going to. He'd actually signed us up to a compounding bridge product. He hadn't done the maths, but he hadn't really told us properly, and it was totally on us because we hadn't read it properly. And we found out that we were on this product that if you didn't redeem after 18 months, it went to compounding interest, which if anyone knows what that is, which everyone should, is very scary. Numbers get big very quickly when you're on a compounding interest term. So anyway, we had these 4 buildings, and we were suddenly alarmed by the fact of this paperwork that we'd found. Cut a long story short, so I could talk about this all day. Essentially, ourselves, there was one other partner brought in, and this other guy, I'm really tempted to name him, but I probably shouldn't, because I feel he should probably get called out. So there were 4 of us involved in, trying to refinance out of these buildings, refinance away from this compounding bridge. And this, guy that drew us in, he was, let's call him Nigel. Okay. So I give him a name. I call him Nigel. It's not his real name. He was like, no, we've just got to develop these properties out. We develop them out and they'll be worth this, and we had a couple of calls with some brokers who were just like, that's not going to happen. No lender's going to actually lend what he thinks on these buildings, because they're going to be mixed use commercial. You've got a pub on the ground floor. That is going to massively reduce the value of the properties above. You're never going to get those kind of values. And, we were suddenly like, okay, right, we need to get out of this pretty sharp. So we tried to finance out to get away from these bridges. The broker rang Caroline and said, how well do you know this Nigel? We're like, oh, pretty well. He's a successful guy, son, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, we've just done a search on him, and there were 9 credit defaults against his wife's name. And his wife is the director of all their companies. He's nowhere to be seen. That's not a red flag, that's a black flag. And he basically said, you will not get any lending from anyone on any of these buildings. And we were like, holy shit.
Bought the wrong thing in the wrong area with the wrong done up value estimates, and gone into bed with a scoundrel.
And the flags were there. They were there. They were so there. Pinstripe suit, big cigars, living at large, being the big man. And actually he had nothing. He had nothing in his name. His wife carried everything, and she had 9 credit defaults, and he didn't say a word. And from that day, when we made that phone call to him and go, what the hell's going on? He disappeared.
I'm not going to swear, not on air. But yeah, so, and I think you said it at the beginning, it was flattery and the idea of the opportunity. So I think there's 3 things that when you're ignoring your gut feeling, there's 3 things that often are the reason for that. It's pressure, desperation, because something else is happening around you that makes you just go, I'll take this decision. You're being flattered into it. And then there's, I'll call it greed, because it kind of is, when it sounds too good to be true, and you're like, pound signs in your eyes. Those 3 things can really go against what your gut feel is and override it, can't it?
Absolutely, yeah. We were a bit naive. We totally hold our hands up to this. We basically we got ourselves out of it. It cost us a lot of money because, we could have folded the company, and there was angels owed about 40 grand at the end of it, because we managed to get the properties sold in auction. We were just like, sell them now. And this guy disappeared. Nigel disappeared. his wife was suddenly involved, and let's call her Jenny, was involved. And she was like, "Oh, Nigel wants to, he says you're idiots. You should be just carrying on with the plan and developing and then selling." And we were like, "Are you stupid? We have looked at these numbers and this is not happening. We are not going deeper in this. We are out, and we will sell these to what we get, and we will make sure all the angels get their money back." And we did, and it cost us 40 grand, which 40 grand at the time we didn't have. Really,
but there's lots of horror stories out there of people losing so much bigger figures. But as a lesson, it cost you 40k, but you learned a lot. Hey,
we totally looked at ourselves. We took that on, and we were like, "That's never happening again. That could have been worse. That could have wiped us out." We could have lost our reputation because we could have said to the angels, "Sorry, you've lost your money," but that would have been our reputation. Our reputation is worth way more than 40 grand. So, we got out of it. We took it on the chin, but that was a massive learning for us of do not ignore the red flags.
Absolutely. Big red flags. And you'd think that we'd get better at this. And we have. We've got lots better at this. So both of these examples were, over a decade ago. But, equally, sometimes things happen around you that you're still ignoring that gut feeling, that subconscious of, I don't know that you should be doing that. So this year we did that. We took on a tenant in one of our commercial projects, which someone who'd gone bankrupt on us, nothing to do with us, but a tenant that had gone bankrupt. A bit of a tool, if we're honest. I didn't really like him from the start, but we inherited him, and the property was empty. It was one of those times where you're in a big refurb, spending 6 figures on refurbs, and it became empty. And then you've got all the liability of business rates, this, that, and the other. We needed someone in there to basically take on that unit, and we chose someone, a desperation, pressure environment, and we shouldn't have chosen them. And even it lasted a year. It cost us money because they just defaulted on lots of stuff. But they were really nice people, but we should have known. We should have called it quits earlier and gone on to stage 2 of what that unit could become. So that actually is just literally happening for us right now. Obviously it's not cost me 40k, but it's cost me a lot of headspace actually. And actually that's priceless, that sort of stuff. So, still happens, and I pinpoint it down to, there was too much going on, pressure and desperation. And I went, oh, I'm going to be optimistic about this. But I knew the red flags were already there. And then I ignored every red flag along the way.
Yeah. And it's kind of I think, we both came from recruitment backgrounds, and in recruitment, it's a really good grounding for human behavior. Because you just see all sorts. You've heard every excuse there is, for people that accept a job and then, don't take it up, and all the excuses, 5 grannies, you pass away and they've got to go to various funerals. We've heard it all, right? So it does give quite good insight to human behavior, and I think it's a good training ground for the red flags. But again, as you say, sometimes when things are happening, you're under pressure to make decisions. You want to think the best of people. We're naturally kind of positive people. We want to think the best. So you give people a chance, and human behavior prevails, and it doesn't work out. We've got one recently where it did work out. I was trying to think of one, but I found one. So on our recent project, we had major red flags about the original contract. I'm not going into that one. Again, fire suppression missed system put in. The original contractor's guy half put it in. So first fix, and then we had to change the original contractor. And the guy that was doing the missed system was a friend of his, and he'd contractor put pressure on this guy to not complete the project for us. Right, so we couldn't really get hold of this guy, and then we did a bit of digging, and it turned out that this guy had a bit of a criminal history. It's really difficult when you're halfway through a job like that. Very few other contractors want to take it on. Yeah, they don't want to finish someone else's work, because they say, well, how can I certify someone else's work because I don't know how well they did it. We managed to get hold of the original guy, and we said, look, we need this finished, and he quoted us quite a lot of money to do it. But he was a little bit flaky about it. Oh, I can maybe do it next week. Maybe, I don't know, maybe, yeah, but okay, I'll do it, kind of thing. And we kind of talked, we said, look, the easiest thing would be to just go, okay, and to pay him some money, because he was like, but I need paying up front. And again, we were quite desperate at the time, because we can't finish this project without this mist system. and we can't get it certified without someone finishing it, and no one else will certify someone else's work. What do we do here? And the easiest thing would have been to go with this guy and to pay him some money. And we both said, I don't trust him. I don't think we should do that. I think that we will never see that money again, and he will not come and do this job. And so we instead hit the phones and we phoned around every single manufacturer and supplier and installer of mist systems in Scotland. There was only about 7 of them, but we phoned them all. And they said, I can't do it, but try this guy. And we eventually found this guy, Frank, who's been amazing. And he said, look, I don't really like doing this, but like, I hear your story. I feel for you, so I'll come and have a look. And he came out, had a look and said, okay, I'll do it. I'll finish it for you and I'll certify it. And he did. He's been brilliant. You try and fade him, phone's off. He's in Spain, and he just took a job on 15 grand of someone's money, fled to Spain, shut down a company. That was a close call. But our gut, having been burned a few times, we're like, don't matter how desperate we are, we're not doing that. Let's hit the phones and we'll find a solution a different way.
We either win or we learn. I think that's the saying, isn't it? And obviously, as you get more experienced, you're winning more, but you'll always have learning moments, because that is life, and that's okay. We just try and minimize the damage that those learning moments might have. So there's a few little flip ups that we've experienced over the way, and obviously there's a few more. But if you're in mid project and the refurb's gone way over what you expected, just don't be overwhelmed. We've all been there. You just got to get boots on the ground, make some phone calls and just try everything you can to now solve it.
I think the best piece of advice I can give is like, sometimes the easy thing is to just ignore your gut, because that appears easier at the time. Very rarely does it work out easier. Sometimes the thing that seems harder will end up being the correct way of doing it, and will in the long term be a lot easier than ignoring your gut.
And have some good people around you, so that when things do hit the fan, that you can pick up the phone or send a little WhatsApp out to the group and go, this has just happened. Anyone got any words of advice? And generally you will always get something back, even if it's just thinking of you, chin up.
Yeah, exactly. Having a community around you is so important. If I don't know the answer, I can normally find someone that does, or as you say, just a bit of support. But normally you'll find that someone has got a number to call for you. And that can start you off in a new direction and help you solve a problem. So community support, really, really important. So how can people become part of our community, Sarah?
So head to the website, thispropertylife.co.uk, go to the membership section, and you can join the crew and the team and, meet up with us in real life and online with huge frequency and regularity. And we've got a private WhatsApp group too. So if you're feeling lonely in business, if some of these ignoring your gut reaction and gut feeling and ignoring the red flags ring true to you, then just, get in amongst people that understand and that can help you out.
Exactly. Great. So we look forward to seeing you all soon. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. We'll see you soon.